Alrighty, good morning, everybody. It is December 31st, New Year's Eve of 2024. The next time we talk to each other, it will be 2025. And we're going to go ahead and take a look here at what happened yesterday. Now, if you recall, I was talking about seeing a really clear bearish head and shoulders from the all-time highs. So let's just look at that real quick here. If we go to the daily time frame, we've got this beautiful, in my opinion, it looks like a beautiful shoulder. There's the neck. There's the head, the all-time high we made just a couple weeks ago. Came down to the neck here, and now here's the right shoulder, and we're coming back down. So to me, that does kind of look like a bearish head and shoulders pattern. For whatever it's worth, right? These patterns don't have to follow through, but that does look like it to me. You can see it also as well from the 4 hour here. There's the two shoulders, and there's the head. Again, for whatever it's worth. And we'll talk about how we change our bias depending on what happens with price in relation to some of the levels on our chart in our pre-market kind of planning session. But right now, we're just going to do a quick review. We'll do the planning session with our members. So let's go ahead and jump back to the open yesterday and take a look. So I circled a couple notable areas where I like to take trades. Now, I was able to finish out right after the market opened here. So I didn't really trade for the rest of the day, but I circled some areas that stuck out to me as trades I would have taken. Whether or not they followed through for a major rotation or not, that's a different story. So we'll take a look at that. So coming into the open, obviously we were in the midst of a big sell-off. And I did kind of emphasize that it made a lot of sense that the bears were going to try and pull price lower, and we could be at the beginning of potentially a multiple 100-point sell-off in the S&P 500 futures market. So coming out of the open, I was basically waxing very bearish. So coming out of the open here, you had a really good first opportunity, and that was this bearish divergence off the first roadmap level, right? So price kind of bounced off of it out of the open, and then we got down below it here. And the first test actually was right where the divergence formed. If you look here, right, price came up into that level. Now, it was the fast-moving average, which we know has somewhat of an edge, and we have our level, which we know has an edge, and we were selling lower, and then we had this beautiful bearish divergence off that high. So that would have been a great entry. Now, you had to hold on because it didn't quite go anywhere, right? We came down. Probably would have got your 2-point scalp off, but then it came up and went through the level by exactly 2 points, and then we got this sell-off. So if you closed out and noticed that we then got this second divergence here, right? This is a big divergence. Look at how high price got, and it even came right to the back end of that 60 and rotated off. So if you saw that, it might have been a clue to either re-enter, or if you were still holding your trade, that was it. That's all you had to do. You got in, and you got yourself a beautiful trade, hopefully taking some profit around 38 there for over 12 points to the downside. And then it kept going, right? So great opportunity there if you ask me. Now, there were other bearish divergences amongst these highs as price was selling off, but we weren't testing up into a level. We didn't have the FMA plus a level plus a divergence. So these would be, in my opinion, maybe opportunities to scalp that could turn into a big trade, but I like to find trades at a level with some divergence. If I have a moving average to bolster it, or a major retracement or whatever, even better. But you can see there's still a bearish divergence from the second swing high. Here you could have got in. There's a bearish divergence off this high you could have got in. There's a bearish divergence even, I believe, off of this high right here off the FMA as we continued selling off. So there were other opportunities, but this to me was the first good one. And then this is where I got in. I literally just put my order in at that level, at 41. And I didn't take, I think it went through by 1 tick. So I took 1 tick of risk, and then I got my full trade off. So that, my friends, I mean, when you're watching this stuff in real time and we're selling off and it's heavy and they're advancing right back up into the 200 right there, I don't know. It's kind of one of those perfect opportunities. Whether it goes through or not, you know you have limited risk, and it could be the beginning of the continuation to the downside. So we've got a beautiful trade from there. We did bounce basically at the next major scaffolding level. They just went through it and then held for how many tests here? I mean, you could have actually bought multiple times and made money on those bounces, right? This swing high here was a major bearish divergence, so that would have also been a decent opportunity, but we didn't come up into the level. We failed just to tick in front, right? So a little bit of support from the next roadmap level, not surprising, right? With a bunch of resistance off the back end of the level above. And then they kind of got down through that next scaffolding level, and you can see holding, 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 and then they kind of get through and hold it to the top end, duck through it, and then that begins the next bounce. So they come up, not really trading beautifully right off the level, right? It gets very close, pulls back, we bounce 2 ticks in front. We come up into the VWAP. Now, if you were still bearish, that was a decent trade right there. You had a bit of a divergence from the last structure, the last major swing high area over here compared to where we got to. But as you can see, didn't get much follow through, and there was actually a bullish clue off of the pullback up to the fast moving average right there, bullish divergence that then followed through for the breakout back above. In my opinion, once we got through VWAP, that pullback to retest this area with VWAP sitting there with the major scaffolding level that was the previous resistance, and this big bullish divergence off those lows as we were testing VWAP here, very, very extreme and right off the 40 line, and then we get the bounce out. So that to me was another great opportunity. If you did take VWAP, you took on like 2 ticks of risk, maybe 3 ticks of risk, and I believe even if you took the level itself to the tick, you took 1 point of risk on it, and then it never came back. So great opportunity there. And then as market kept going up, and you can see all these rotations are basically off our level. Sometimes we miss them by 1 or 2 ticks. This instance was crappy. But you can see all these major rotational areas in the chart are right off our levels, right? So as we come up, there is a bearish divergence off this level right here. So good trade opportunity, just not necessarily exactly what I would want. And then, and even, I'm kind of missing this right here, but even as we're breaking out to new highs, they pull back right here and they give you a little opportunity to buy the roadmap level with bullish divergence, right? If you saw this in real time, noticing we're holding the roadmap level, basically testing the last major swing high, and a big bullish divergence from that low, right? From right there. So great opportunity to buy that level, take almost no risk, and get the pop right to the next level. And then we get there, and there's a bearish divergence inside of there. Maybe not, actually. We did tick higher, that ticked higher. So again, not necessarily my favorite type of trade, but the levels do have edge to them. So even just blindly buying and selling them, sometimes you nail these rotations perfectly, and they become a 20-point move or a 100-point move in the market. You nailed that rotation, right? So now this trade to me also great opportunity. As you're noticing the bulls rip this higher, we get a pullback right into the last major swing high, which by the way, there was a bearish divergence as we peaked 1 tick away from our level and got that pullback. Interesting. But came right back into that swing. It was our roadmap level. And this to me is kind of like, it was a test of the 200. They missed it by maybe a point, right? But what I'm cluing into here is this beautiful bullish divergence as we're pulling back to test that last major structure in what seems to be a strong market as the bulls recover. And there's the divergence right there. Swing low is lower. The swing low on the RVI is higher. We're testing that area, and then bam. You didn't even have to really get in right there. You could have waited for the break through the fast moving average to get above it and try to enter from there. And then you get the pop up, and we come up, and it's, again, not perfect off some of the levels, but once we kind of get through it, notice it pulls back right to it, and then we continue on higher, coming up into the previous daily high, where again, you do technically have a divergence from there that you could have faded and actually made some decent money on the way down. It came all the way to 76.5. You could definitely have made 5 points to the downside, or took it off right at the roadmap level, expecting it to bounce and that's exactly what ended up happening. And then they came up, I believe this was the high of the day as we got into the afternoon, and came all the way up into the next major structure zone here. And as you can see, did not hold it perfectly at the beginning. So it kind of went through it a bunch of times, nothing super clean. But then at the end of the day here, as we went into the end of the day, they held it and they held it and they held it and they held it. And then finally they came up, probably took some of the stops out for anyone who was short, and then brought it all the way back down. So inside of the chop that happened from the top end here, there were still some pretty notable rotations, right? This area at 59.7775, beautiful area that, even though it didn't work on every test, was a very notable area for support all throughout this chop. Like, how many times did we come right to 77, 77.75 and bounce out? I mean, almost every time. And then again, we then sold off, holding that level eventually. And we see that happen with our roadmap levels because this is a major structure zone in the market where we see on the higher time frames huge projections from here. So it's not surprising to see the bulls come right up into that area, or I'm sorry, the bears take all the stops out because there's probably a bunch of people short from there, and then take it right where all the shorts wanted to go, right? So they did that starting up here, and then right at that last test, they came through it by just enough to probably take some people who had their stops right on above there, and then took it right where everyone wanted it to go, right? So this right here, this pullback, as we're kind of pulling back from kind of in the middle of nowhere here, what I call it, and they come down right into that level, and we get a bullish divergence, right? So if you're watching this in real time, there's the bullish divergence, and now we're starting to head out. So that was a good buy right there, expecting the bulls to stay in power here for the rip higher. Just didn't get very far. It only got 71 to 84, 85. And then here I have another bearish setup that I would have loved to have taken if I was trying to find a trade. And that is, as we're failing from these highs, we come right up into the back end of the major roadmap level, and we get a bearish divergence on the first test, on the second test, and then on the third test there, right? And this was 85.25 to 87. So it didn't even, if you put a short blinding there with just a 2-point stop, you should have never been stopped and actually got this pullback right to where I would have told you to take profit. And that was where the bounce happened, right off the roadmap level. There's that 77 we just talked about. And then we begin, after that final thing, the push lower. And on the way down, I would have told you that this right here would have been a great opportunity to get in on the double top, test of the 200, bearish divergence, markets failing. But if you took it, it only got to the fast moving average. You would have gotten a little over 2, maybe 3 points out of it, and it came right back, right? So that would have been maybe I would have got a scalp out on portion of my trade, and then the rest would have been stopped out or break even. And then from there, kept going. There was a great opportunity off the back end of VWAP there with a bearish divergence as we're testing VWAP and the market is selling off. Great opportunity with basically no risk. Even could have tried the back end of the scaffolding level as we're selling. And then down here at the end of the day, I thought this was probably a great buy opportunity as we were testing into the next scaffolding level and everything selling off. We make this double bottom. We get the divergence, very, very clear divergence off the level. Would have been a good place to buy. It just didn't really go anywhere, right? So once again, you would have gotten a 2-3 point scalp off of it to the fast moving average. And then this big bearish divergence, and it fell through, right? And that's how the day ended right there. Not really doing anything else to note. That brings us into last night. Let's bring this back in, where we had, in my opinion, the best trade of the night. Remember, before the Hopal prints, it was not there, so that did not tag the Hopal. You didn't have it on the chart until 6 a.m. Eastern. So really, unless you bought from this roadmap level here, which held throughout the whole night, you would have got the whole pop. I would have tried maybe a fade if I was watching this in real time off this 50% level with this divergence. Again, here's an example where I thought it looked like a good trade. didn't get much follow through. I probably would have got 2 points, got first contract off, but then it came right back, right? And now here we are coming into the open, and the market is, what do you know, holding and bouncing right off the roadmap level at 70 again and trying to push back up. So let's go ahead and jump up to the higher time frames and see if there's anything notable here for this morning. Remember, it's New Year's Eve. The market will close early, I believe at 2 p.m. Eastern. So let's go ahead and jump up to these higher time frames.